Hello. In the previous episode I dropped off the engine and started refurbishing the engine ancillaries. That's pretty much what I'm going to be doing in this episode as well, because there's a lot to do. I'm really pleased with the way the vapor blasting has made this intake manifold look pretty much like new. I've just got this surface here to polish up and then it'll be ready to put back on the car. I've also just collected most of the chrome plating from Mark Restore, the chrome plating specialist in Coventry. It looks really good for its bag, so what I'm going to do is sort through it and stash it away so that it doesn't get any damage. And I'll only need to get it out again when I'm ready to put it back on the car. This is Fosseway Classic Car Workshop, 1967 E-Type restoration. Refurbishing the steel parts is a multi-stage process. First of all, you need to strip off any nuts, bolts and bushes, as seen here on the coolant header tank bracket. And greasy and oily parts need degreasing, rinsing and drying. Then each part needs sandblasting to get it back to bare metal and get rid of any rust. Now I could get someone else to do all this work, but over the last few years I've been building up some of the equipment to do it, so this is what I've got. I've got a 3-phase 150 litre compressor with a 10 metre extension hose that runs across the workshop floor and into this 100 litre expansion tank, which then connects up to the sandblast cabinet. I've recently added a noisy but much needed dust extractor on the side, as well as upgrading the lighting. It's not perfect, but the compressor just about keeps up, and I spend a long time stooped over this cabinet, making sure that I clean the parts up as thoroughly as possible. I use an aluminium oxide blast grit and replace the 4.5mm ceramic nozzle quite regularly, as it works far better when it's new. To make things easier and improve the quality of the finish, I've recently built this part spray booth with extraction through to fresh air in the corner of the workshop. The preparation process may be the same, but the finishes vary, so here's a run through some of the key steel parts that I've refurbished. The left hand scoop here has some surface rust showing through the mid-grey metallic paint. The underside is satin black with some red overspray and a bit more surface rust. You can see all the fixings need some work as well. And I've had some paint, colour and fleck matched before stripping, as that's the next step. Sandblasting each of these took about 45 minutes. There's quite a large surface area and I was trying to do it really thoroughly. With the old paint and surface rust stripped back, I've now got a part that's nearly ready for paint again. But first of all I want to get those little fixings off, as I couldn't see really what I was doing before they went in the blaster. To set the scoop at the correct angle, the centre of the 3 fixings has got a bolt with 2 spaces on it that have been corroded on, so I need to be careful taking them off. With the spaces out the way, a bit of penetrating fluid and cleaning up the threads, I can safely remove the remaining bolt. Followed then by the other 2. Then it's back into the sandblaster to clean up the remaining parts that were covered before. For the next stage I get to use my newly built part spray booth. I'm using an epoxy primer sealer to protect the raw steel from corrosion. Next I'm using a U-Pol primer in a rattle can, so that's much easier and I can do both sides quite quickly and easily. I can then paint the underside of the scoop in a couple of coats of satin black. I then prepare the visible surface of the scoop with 1000 grit wet and dry before getting some coats of the colour match paint that I got earlier onto the visible surface, before finally getting a few coats of clear coat on to finish it all off. Once this is hardened in a couple of days time I can then polish it up, apply new fixings and it'll be ready to stash away until I can put it back onto the bonnet. So as I'm going through refurbishing all the brackets around the engine bay, I've come across a bit of a problem here. This alternator shield has got a split where this bracket here is spot welded onto this one. So if I hold this up you should be able to see that. So what I've done is started getting it back to bare metal, because I think really what I'm going to have to do is get the MIG welder out and just weld that up a bit and smooth it off, because really that's in quite a prominent position on the engine bay and I don't really want that showing. So it's back to bare metal now in that area. It's also a not very straight line across here, so I'll just use a hammer and dolly to straighten out this line and also try and flatten out this area ready for welding. I'll actually use the back of the vise here because it seems like a good flat surface, just to gradually work this down. Okay, that's actually closed the split up quite a lot now, which is good. I'll just go a bit more before I get the welder out. Okay, so I'm reasonably happy with that. Now to get the MIG out. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that now. It's a lot tidier than it was. I don't want to grind down too much because otherwise I'll really end up thinning the metal either side of the weld too much. This looks pretty authentic with the original spot weld here. Okay, there's a bit of mess there, but I might just run a very thin skim of filler over that just to fill it up and it'll be ready for priming and painting. This air filter housing is about as big as I can refurbish myself. I'm going to start by trying to scrape the paint off. This has got this black, I'm not quite sure what on top here, but it's not the original finish. The original would have been more like this silver hammerite, which is still visible in places, but I'm going to take the whole lot back to bare metal and repaint it. It's going to take me quite a while, so let's see how this goes. Well, it's taken me about 20 minutes to scrape down this really horrible layer of paint from the outside. It's got most of it off. You can see the amount of surface rust underneath, but fundamentally it's sound. The inside is just really difficult to get to, and thick layers of paint. So I'm going to try it in the sandblaster to see how that goes. After a long session in the sandblaster, it's great to see the original pressed lettering reappear on the surface. Then it's over to this hammerite all-in-one primer and top coat, hammered finish silver paint, which matches the original finish. With a couple of coats it's looking great and it'll look fantastic in the engine bay. For all of the parts to be painted black, of course, it's sandblasting to start with, then prime, and then satin black. Or with some of the parts, depending on how exposed they are, I'll go to epoxy primer, then prime, and then finishing off with a satin black coat. There are still plenty more parts to be done, but I'm making good progress working my way through them. I've now got a nice collection of refurbished steel parts and more still in paint, so this pile is going to grow quite quickly. Please join me next time when I'll be getting into restoring the fiberglass parts and getting on to polish the aluminium. Thanks very much for watching.